Before we begin, if you enjoy stories where humanity surprises the galaxy, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because out there in the stars, humans are often underestimated, until they prove everyone wrong. Now let's begin. The bet was simple. 20 credits said the human would quit by noon. 40 credits said he wouldn't make it to noon. The Vorkai cadet named Reth had offered the highest odds. He said the human would be gone before the first break. He said it loudly. He said it standing 10 feet away from the human. The human heard every word. He didn't say anything. He just started stretching. That was the first sign that something was wrong. Nobody noticed. Not yet. The Velari Combined Armed Forces Academy sat at the edge of the Mirren Reach. A brutal posting, cold star, thin light, heavy gravity. The station had been deliberately constructed at 1.3 standard gravity. Not an accident. Not a design flaw. The founders had built it this way on purpose. The idea was simple. Train hard in heavy gravity. Fight easy everywhere else. For most species, it worked. The Velhari cadets had been born on a 1.1 gravity world. The Surkai came from 1.4. The Dreth kind had evolved under 1.5. They were all uncomfortable at the academy. They had all adapted. It was the adaptation that made them soldiers. And then the human arrived. His name was Cadet Second Class Jonah Reeves. Human. Terran origin. Age 24. His file listed him as a transfer from the Earth Defense Cooperative. Prior service, 3 years. Notable incidents, 17 disciplinary citations and 1 commendation for valor. The commendation was for pulling 2 injured soldiers out of a burning transport under active fire. Commandant Vesa had read the file twice. She had focused on the 17 citations. He sounds like a problem, she said. Her aide, a young Velhari named Toth, had nodded carefully. He sounds like a human, he said. Vesa had looked at him. Is there a difference? Tooth had thought about that for a moment. We'll find out, Commandant. The human walked into the bay at 0600. He was the last one in. 41 cadets were already lined up. They watched him cross the floor. He was shorter than almost everyone in the room. Lighter. No visible armor plating. No reinforced skeletal ridge. No secondary muscle droops. Just a medium-sized biped in standard-issue training clothes. The Vorkai cadet, Dreth, turned to the cadet next to him and said something. Several cadets laughed. The human found his place in the formation. He stood there, quietly, waiting, like he had all the time in the world. Senior Instructor Kale walked in at 0622. He was Sorkai, 5 years as a combat unit commander, 8 years instructing. He had trained over 300 cadets. He had broken a third of them, not cruelly, efficiently, because the ones who broke in training survived the ones who broke in combat. He walked the length of the formation without speaking. He stopped in front of the human, looked him up and down, then kept walking. Formation run, he said. 2,000 meters. Full kit. Begin. The kit weighed 30 kilograms. Standard issue. For a human, that was roughly 40% of his body weight. The Sorkai cadets carried it like it was nothing. The Velhari cadets gritted their teeth and moved. The human picked up his kit, settled it on his shoulders, and ran. At the 400-meter mark, the formation was already spreading. The fast cadets were pulling ahead. The heavier-framed Dreth kind were falling toward the back. The human was in the middle of the pack, not leading, not struggling, just running. Just running. At the 800-meter mark, Instructor Kale was watching from the observation rail. His assistant, a Velhari cadet corporal named Ses, stood beside him with a monitoring tablet. Sir, what? The human's pace is stable. So, he hasn't adjusted his stride once. Kale glanced at the tablet. He looked at the formation below. He looked at the human specifically. What's his heart rate? 142. Kale frowned. That's low. Yes, sir. The kit is 30 kilos. Yes, sir. At 1.3 gravity. Yes, sir. A pause. He's been to altitude training, maybe. Or, sir. What? The human just moved up 4 positions. Kale looked again. The human had, without any apparent increase in effort, passed 4 cadets. He was now running in the top third of the formation, still at the same steady, unbroken pace. The run ended. The cadets lined up in the bay, gasping. Several of the Dreth kind had their hands on their knees. One Velhari cadet was making a sound that was probably the Velhari equivalent of dry heaving. The human was standing upright, breathing harder than usual, but upright. Dreth was bent double 5 meters away. He looked sideways at the human. Then he looked away. He didn't say anything this time. The morning continued. Weighted carries, obstacle circuits, balance training under variable gravity bursts. The Academy's training system could pulse gravity up to 2.0 in short intervals. It was designed to disorient, to stress, to find the breaking point and push past it. The first gravity burst hit at 0900, 1.8 standard, 15 seconds. 3 cadets stumbled. 1 fell. The human widened his stance, dropped his center of gravity slightly, and kept moving through the obstacle course like nothing had changed. Instructor Kale saw it from the rail. He saw the stance adjustment. He knew what that was. That was someone who had practiced moving under heavy gravity. Practiced it enough that the adjustment was automatic. Instinctive. He walked down to the floor level. He waited until the course segment ended. Then he walked over to the human. Reeves, sir. Where did you train before this? Earth Defense Cooperative, Mira Station, and 1 year at the Korvath Frontier Post. Korvath is a 1.6 gravity world. Yes, sir. Kale looked at him. You spent a year there. Yes, sir. In the field. Mostly, sir. A pause. That explains the stance, sir. When the burst hit, you adjusted your stance. The human thought about it for a moment. I didn't realize I did that, sir. Kale stared at him. You didn't realize? No, sir. It's just, what? It felt lighter than Korvath, sir. I just moved normally. Kale looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. He went back to the observation rail. He pulled out his own notes. He wrote something down. Sess leaned over. What did you write, sir? Kale didn't answer immediately. Korvath Frontier Post, he said. The combat posting? Yes. What about it? It's 1.6 standard gravity. Sess looked at the training floor, at the human below, moving to the next station like he was on a light gravity holiday world. Oh, said Sess quietly. Yes, said Kale. The bets had been revised by midday. Nobody was betting the human quit anymore. Dreth had moved on to a new theory. He's enhanced, he said during the meal break. Synthetic muscle grafts, skeletal reinforcement. The Earth Cooperative does it to their special units. A Velhari cadet named Paris frowned. His file says he's standard issue. Files can be wrong. Why would they hide enhancement records? Why wouldn't they? Paris looked across the bay at the human, who was eating with efficient speed and staring at the wall. He doesn't look enhanced. He doesn't look like much of anything, Dress said. That's the point. The human finished his meal. He looked up. He and Dreth made eye contact for exactly 1 second. Then the human looked back at the wall. Dreth looked away first. He didn't say anything else about the enhancements. The afternoon brought the pit drill. This was the exercise that Commandant Vesa had personally observed for the past 6 intake classes. It was her favorite diagnostic. Not because it was the hardest exercise, because it showed something the physical test didn't. The pit was a sunken floor area 15 meters across, filled with 60 centimeters of dense resistance medium. Like running through wet sand, except heavier. Except the resistance varied based on the Academy's pressure system. The drill was simple. Get from one side to the other. Every cadet. Best time wins. The current record was 41 seconds. Held by a Sorkai cadet from 3 years ago. Nobody had come close since. The cadets went in order. The Sorkai cadets performed well. Short, powerful strides, built for resistance environments. The Velhari cadets were slower but consistent. The Dreth kind were faster than expected given their size. Dreth himself posted a time of 54 seconds. He seemed pleased. He stepped out of the pit and looked toward the human. Your turn, Terran. The human stepped to the edge of the pit. He looked down at the resistance medium. He looked across at the other side. He stepped in. If you're enjoying the story so far, Drop a like on the video. It helps the story reach more people who love humanity-first sci-fi stories. What happened next was the subject of conversation in the Academy mess hall for the next week. The human did not run the way anyone else ran. He didn't use short, powerful strides like the Sorkai. He didn't lumber through like the Dreth kind. He ran at almost full stride, long, reaching, like someone who had spent time moving through difficult terrain and had figured out the most efficient way to do it. And he was fast. Not in a burst. Not in a sprint. He was fast all the way across, the same speed at meter 1 as at meter 15. His time was 38 seconds. The room was quiet when it was announced. Dreth looked at the board, then at the human. "That's wrong," he said. "The system made an error." "Run it again," someone said from the back. Instructor Kale looked at the timing system. At the human. At Dreth. "It didn't make an error," Kale said. "How?" said Dreth. Kale didn't answer that question. Because he didn't have an answer. Not yet. That evening, Commandant Bessa reviewed the day's assessment files. She read the human's results 3 times. Then she called Kale. "Tell me what you saw," she said. Kale told her. She was quiet for a moment. "A year at Corbath." "Yes, Commandant." "That's it? That's your explanation?" "It's a partial explanation." "And the rest?" A long pause. "I don't have the rest yet, Commandant." She looked out her office window at the training bay below. Dark now, empty. "Get me the rest," she said, quickly. Day 2 began at 5:30. Kale had made adjustments to the schedule. He had spent 3 hours the night before doing so. He had also put in a data request to the Galactic Medical Registry. He was waiting on a reply. In the meantime, he had a training day to run. "Today," he told the formation, "we are testing combat fundamentals." No elaboration, no preview of what was coming. That was intentional. Combat didn't give you a preview. The first station was hand-to-hand fundamentals. Cadets were paired by approximate mass, then deliberately mismatched. The idea was to force adaptation, to fight someone you couldn't overpower, to find another way. The human was paired with a Sorkai cadet named Verth. Verth was a head taller and 20 kilos heavier. Natural armor plating across the upper torso and arms. Fast hands. Verth looked at the human with the polite expression of someone who intended to be done with this quickly and move on. The human looked back. Same expression he always had. Patient. Waiting. The round began. Breath moved first. Quick grab. Center of mass. A technique that worked on almost everyone. The human wasn't there. Breath corrected. The human moved again. It took 4 seconds before Verth realized something. The human wasn't retreating. He was moving sideways. Circling. Never straight back. Always to the side. Always making Verth turn. Verth turned again, and on the 3rd rotation, the human wasn't where he expected. He was close, very close. His arm went somewhere it shouldn't have been able to reach. His weight went somewhere unexpected. And Verth, armored and trained and larger in every dimension, found himself face down on the mat, with the human's knee in his back, and an arm locked in a position that was somehow both gentle and completely inescapable. "Submit," said the human. Verth submitted. The human let go and stepped back immediately. He offered Verth a hand. Verth stared at it, then took it. Instructor Kale had watched from 6 feet away. He had watched very carefully. He walked over to the human after Verth had cleared the area. "Reeves." "Sir, what was that arm position?" The human thought for a moment. "Rear shoulder lock. Modified." "Modified how?" "Standard version requires a height advantage. I'm shorter, so I adjusted the entry angle and used his rotation momentum to compensate." Kale stared at him. "Where did you learn that?" "Earth. Home Defense Training Program. Age 14. Age 14. "Yes, sir. You've been training hand-to-hand since age 14. Age 12, actually, sir. But the formal program started at 14. A pause. 12 years. "Yes, sir." "Continuously." "More or less, sir." Kale stood there. He looked at the mat where Verth had just been. He looked at the human. "What else do you know?" The human considered the question. He seemed to give it genuine thought. It would take a while to list everything, sir. Kale walked away. He wrote something in his notes. Then he crossed it out. Then he wrote something else. The data reply from the Galactic Medical Registry arrived at 1300. Kale read it at his desk while the cadets were in their midday break. He read it once quickly, then slowly. Then he called, "Commandant Bessa." "I have the rest," he said. She came to his office. He showed her the file. She read it. "Average human bone density," she said. 1.3 to 1.5 times the Valhari standard, Kale said, despite originating from a near-standard gravity world. Why? Evolutionary. The registry file has a research annotation from about 40 years ago. A Drell xenobiologist. He pointed to the relevant section. Humans evolved as persistence predators. They don't chase prey to kill it fast. They chase it for hours, days sometimes. They run it into the ground. Vesa was quiet. The bone density is a consequence. High-impact sustained locomotion over thousands of years. The skeleton had to reinforce or it would have failed. She kept reading. Pain response. Unusual. He leaned forward. They have a neurochemical called endorphin. The more pain and stress a human is under, the more of it is released. It actively suppresses pain signals and in sufficient quantity produces something closer to euphoria. She looked up. They feel good when they're in pain? Under sustained extreme stress. Yes, apparently. A long silence. That's not a feature, she said. That's a weapons system. The annotation uses different language, Kale said. But yes, that's essentially what it describes. She set down the file. She looked at the training bay through the window. The cadets were starting to return from break. The human was already there. He was doing something with his hands, working a technique slowly, repeating it, again and again, even during the break, even when nobody was watching. He's practicing, she said. He's always practicing, Kyle said. I reviewed the surveillance footage from yesterday evening. After lights out, he was on the floor of his quarters running drills for 40 minutes. She watched the human below. What do we do with this? Kale thought about it. We stop designing tests around what we think he can't do, he said, and start finding out what his actual ceiling is. Does he have one? A pause. I don't know yet. Find out. Day 3. The training room held its breath. Word had spread in the way word always spreads in a closed environment. Quietly, completely, and with significant impeachment. By morning assembly, every cadet in the bay had heard some version of the story. Some versions were accurate. Some versions had the human lifting things that no human could lift. Some versions had the human fighting Vreeth with one hand behind his back. None of them were quite right. All of them were closer to the truth than anyone was comfortable admitting. Kale had scheduled a new exercise. He called it a stress continuity trial. The concept was straightforward. Cadets would perform a set of physical tasks. After each task, the gravity would increase by 1/10 of a standard unit. They would keep going until they couldn't. Their breaking point would be recorded. The data would be used to calibrate future training loads. That was the official explanation. The unofficial explanation was that Kale wanted to know where the humans stopped. He suspected the answer would be educational. He was right, just not in the way he expected. The trial began at 1.3. Standard Academy gravity. Carry 30 kilos across the floor, 50 meters. Back and forth. Continuous. Easy enough. Cadets settled into rhythm. 1.4. 3 cadets put down their kits. They were done. No shame. The trial was diagnostic. There was no punishment for stopping. 1.5. 4 more cadets stopped. The Dreth kind, built for heavy gravity, were still moving. The human was still moving. 1.6. Dreth was struggling. His jaw was set. His movements had shortened. He was fighting the weight. He was still going. The human's stride had shortened slightly. He was still going. 1.7. Dreth stopped. He set his kit down carefully. He stood there, breathing hard, watching the remaining cadets. 5 Sorkai. 2 Valhari. 1 human. 1.8. The 2 Valhari stopped. 3 Sorkai stopped. 2 Sorkai and 1 human remaining. 1.9. 1 Sorkai stopped. one Sorkai and one human. The room had gone very quiet. The remaining Sorkai cadet, a veteran of the Frontier Corps named Taval, was moving at a slow grinding walk. His kit was leaving dents in the floor where he dragged it on turns. His breathing was audible across the room. The human was moving faster than him. Not fast, but faster. 2.0. The room held its breath. Kale was of the gravity controls himself. He had sent Cess to the far side of the room. He wanted to see this without commentary. Taval took 3 more steps. Then he stopped. He set his kit down with enormous care. He straightened up slowly. He looked at the human. He nodded once. The human nodded back without stopping a circuit. Taval walked to the wall and sat down. The room was silent except for the sound of the human's boots on the floor, and the sound of 30 kilograms of kit, and the sound of 2 times normal gravity pressing down on everything in the room, including the human, who kept walking. 2.1. 2.2. At 2.2, Kale heard something he hadn't heard from a cadet in 8 years of instructing. He heard the human humming, quietly, some kind of short repeating melody. Under his breath, Kale stared at him. Reeves. The human looked up. Sir, are you humming? A pause. Yes, sir. Why? It helps with rhythm, sir. Keeps the pace even. You're at 2.2 standard gravity. Yes, sir. With 30 kilos, yes, sir. And you're humming. The human seemed to consider whether this was a problem. Should I stop, sir? Kale looked at him for a long moment. No, he said. Continue. He turned away. He put one hand flat on the wall. He stood there. He was trying to decide if what he was feeling was professional respect or something that felt much more like the beginning of genuine fear. 2.3. The human slowed. Noticeably, Kale watched. Kale waited. The human's breathing changed, deeper, more controlled, more deliberate. He stopped humming. He was working now, really working. His jaw was set. His eyes were fixed on the far wall. Not on Kale, not on the watching cadets, just the wall, just the next step, just that. He was still walking. 2.4. His pace dropped again. Each step was a separate decision. Each step was a small victory. He was still going. At the far end of the room, Death sat with his arms folded, watching. His expression had changed. He wasn't smiling anymore. He wasn't making comments. He was just watching. The way you watch something you don't fully understand. The way you watch something that makes you reconsider what you thought you knew. 2.5. The human stopped. Not because he fell. Not because he collapsed. He stopped walking, set his kit down carefully, and stood there, chest heaving. Both hands on his knees, head down. Breathing. Just breathing. Kale waited. 30 seconds. A minute. The human straightened up. He looked at Kale. That's my ceiling, sir, he said. His voice was even. Controlled. Tired. But controlled. Tired. But controlled. At least today. Kale stared at him. At least today, he repeated slowly. I'll probably have more tomorrow, sir, after sleep. Kale looked at the gravity indicator on the wall. 2.5. He looked at the human. He looked at the row of cadets sitting along the walls who had stopped far earlier. He looked at Dreth. Dreth was looking at the floor. Session ends, Kale said quietly. Nobody moved for a moment. Then slowly, the room started breathing again. That evening was different. Kale had expected the cadets to avoid the human, or to challenge him, push back. Species pride was a powerful motivator. What he saw instead surprised him. 3 cadets went to the human's table at dinner. Taval, the Sorkai who had lasted the longest before him. 1 Vilhari, 1 Drethkind whose name Kale didn't catch from across the room. They sat down. They talked. Kale couldn't hear what was said, but at one point the human demonstrated something with his hands, a movement. The Belhari tried to copy it. Failed. Tried again. The human adjusted his grip. Tried again. Better. The Velhari nodded. The human nodded back. That was all. But Kale watched it and felt something shift. Day 4 brought the room. The training room. That was what the cadets called it. Officially, it was the combat stress environment, but the cadets called it the room because of what happened there. The room was sealed, 12 meters square. Variable gravity, variable atmosphere, variable temperature, and it came equipped with the Academy's combat training AI. The AI was called Keth, after the species that had designed it. Keth was not designed to lose. Keth was designed to be exactly as difficult as necessary to push a cadet to their absolute limit. It assessed you in the first 60 seconds. It fought you at 110% of your maximum capability for the entire session, without slowing down, without tiring, without mercy. Cadets went in one at a time. Most lasted between 4 and 8 minutes before tapping out. The record was 11 minutes, held by Taval. The cadets went in order, one by one. Results posted. Tevel went in and came out after 9 minutes. He was limping slightly. Dreth went in and came out after 5 minutes. He didn't say anything when he emerged. The human was last. Kale stood at the door controls. You understand what's in there? Yes, sir. It will not stop. It will not slow down. It will not respond to anything except a full tap-out signal from you. Understood, sir? The record is 11 minutes. The human looked at the door. What does the AI actually do in there, sir? What form does it take? It adapts to whatever you are. Mirrors your combat style, then counters it, then overwhelms it. Adapts how fast? Kale thought about it. Usually within the first minute. The human nodded slowly. He seemed to be thinking about something. And if I change styles? Kale looked at him. It readapts. How long does readaptation take? A pause. 30 seconds. Roughly. The human nodded again. Okay, he said. Okay, he repeated. Yes, sir, I'm ready. Kale opened the door. The human walked in. The door sealed behind him. The first 4 minutes were what everyone expected. The AI assessed, identified patterns, countered. The human took hits. Several of them. He kept moving. The room's internal sensors fed data to the external display. Kale watched the numbers. Cadet impact registered. Cadet on feet. Cadet impact registered. Cadet on feet. At the 4-minute mark, something changed. The human changed his style. Completely. Different footwork. Different reach. Different engagement distance. The AI paused. It was a tiny pause, barely detectable. 30 seconds of readaptation. The human used those 30 seconds. He used them hard. The impact numbers reversed. AI impact registered. AI impact registered again. AI impact registered again. Then the AI readapted. The human changed again. Different style. 30-second window. He used it again. In the observation room, Commandant Vessa had arrived. Nobody had told her. She had seen the data feed from her office. She had come down herself. She stood next to Kale. Neither of them spoke. The display read, elapsed time, 8 minutes. The human was still fighting. He keeps changing, Seth said from behind them. Yes, Kale said. Every time it adapts, he changes. Yes. How many styles does he have? A pause. Apparently more than the AI expects, Kale said. 9 minutes. 10 minutes. At 10 minutes, the human was audibly gasping through the room's external audio feed. He was tired, genuinely tired. He was also still fighting. 11 minutes, the record. Nobody in the observation area made a sound. 11 minutes, 30 seconds. 12 minutes. At 13 minutes and 40 seconds, the tap-out signal activated. The door opened. The human walked out. He was bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow. His left arm was held slightly away from his body. He was breathing in long, rough pulls. He looked at Kale. How long, sir? 13 minutes, 40 seconds. The human nodded. He sat down on the floor, right there in the corridor outside the room. He sat down with his back against the wall and his knees up and his eyes closed. I should have changed faster on the third transition, he said. I gave it too long. Kale looked down at him. You broke the record by 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Yes, sir. And you're analyzing your transitions. Yes, sir. Why? The human opened his eyes. He looked up at Kale. Because next time, I want to go longer, sir. Kale stared at him. Then he turned to the observation group. Taval was there. Dreth was there. Several other cadets who had drifted over when the time passed 10 minutes. Dreth was looking at the human on the floor. He was not looking at him the way he had on day one. He was looking at him the way you look at something that has changed, the way you understand things. 20 credits, said a Velhari cadet from the back of the group. Someone else groaned. I told you not to bet, said another voice. Nobody was laughing. Commandant Vesa went back to her office. She drafted a communication to Galactic Defense Command. It took her an hour. She rewrote it twice. The final version said, the Academy has taken on a Terran transfer cadet. Performance over 4 training days has produced results that do not align with existing Galactic Registry classifications for the species. I am filing a formal data amendment request and recommend that Command review current Terran capability assessments. Additionally, I recommend that any future intake of Terran cadets be preceded by updated xenobiological briefings. Not for their safety, for ours. She paused at that last line. She left it in. On the 5th day, Kale changed the training assignments. He paired the human with Tavel for advanced combat drills. He didn't explain why. He didn't need to. By midday, Taval was learning the transition technique. By afternoon, 2 other cadets had joined them. By the following week, half the upper-tier cadets were practicing it. Dreth was one of them. He never acknowledged it directly. He just showed up and started working. The human taught him the 3rd transition without comment. Dreth practiced it for an hour. Why do you always keep changing? Dreth asked eventually. The human thought about it. Because nothing stays the same, he said. The moment you commit to one thing forever, you've given whoever's watching a map. Dreth was quiet for a moment. Where did you learn that? An old training instructor, back home. What was her name? Sergeant Mira Voss. Earth Defense Cooperative. She used to say, the human paused. She used to say that the most dangerous soldier isn't the strongest one. It's the one who never runs out of next moves. Dreth thought about that. She sounds difficult. She was terrifying, the human said. What happened to her? She retired. She teaches 17-year-olds now. Dreth stared at him. She was scarier than you. The human smiled for the first time since arriving at the academy. It was a small smile, but it was there. Yes, he said, she was. The graduation assessment came 6 weeks later. Every cadet was evaluated. Combat proficiency, endurance ratings, tactical decision metrics, stress response modeling. The results were compiled and ranked. Commandant Vesa read them in her office. Then she read them again. Jonah Reeves, Cadet 2nd Class, Terran. Ranked 1st overall in combat proficiency, 1st in stress response modeling, 2nd in endurance rating. 2nd because the scoring model had been built around known species parameters. Vesa had already submitted a request to revise the model. She suspected when it was revised, his position would change. She set down the file. She looked out the window at the training bay. It was empty at this hour, dark and still. She thought about the registry file. Standard threat, low to mid capability. She thought about a cadet who changed styles faster than an AI could adapt, who walked at 2.5 standard gravity, who practiced drills at midnight in his quarters because he wanted to be better, who had arrived at an academy full of species who thought they understood strength, and had quietly, methodically, without drama or declaration, demonstrated something they had never considered, that the most important variable wasn't mass, or armor, or gravity adaptation. It was the one thing the registry file hadn't thought to measure. The refusal to stop. On the last day, Kale found the human in the training bay. Alone, still working. Reeves. Sir, training period is over. Yes, sir. Just finishing something. Kale watched him for a moment. You placed 1st in the assessment. The human nodded. He didn't stop the drill. The combat AI has filed an adaptation note on your transition technique. The human looked up at that. It's going to update itself against it. Yes. The human considered that. Good, he said. Good. It means I'll have to find new transitions. Kale looked at him. He thought about everything he had written in his notes over 6 weeks. He thought about the gravity trial, the room, the midnight drills, the smile that had happened exactly once. "Reeves," he said, "what do you want?" The human stopped. He stood with his hands at his sides. He looked at the training bay around him, the empty floor, the walls with their equipment racks, the room at the end of the corridor. "I want to be good enough," he said. "For what?" A pause. "Whatever comes next, sir." Kale stood there. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped. He looked back. "The Academy is opening an advanced program next cycle," he said. "I heard, sir. I've been asked to recommend a candidate to assist with instruction." The human looked at him. "There are several strong candidates from this class." "Yes, sir. I've recommended you." A silence. "Why, sir?" Kale thought about how to answer that. He thought about persistence predators, about dense bones, about neurochemicals that turned pain into fuel, about a species that had looked up at the stars from a medium-sized world and decided the galaxy was something to move through, not around. "Because," he said finally, "I want the next class to understand something on day one." "What's that, sir?" "That the most dangerous thing in this training bay," Kale said, "is not the equipment, not the gravity system, not the combat AI." He looked at the human. "It's the thing that doesn't stop," he said, "even when you expect it to." He walked out. The door closed, and in the empty training bay, the human stood still for one moment. Then he picked up where he left off. Finding the next transition. Already thinking 3 moves ahead, and that's the story of how one human changed what the galaxy believed was possible. If this story moved you, leave a like on the video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories where humanity refuses to give up, subscribe for more HFY Sci-Fi stories. Because out there in the stars, humans are just getting started.